Tell me about you and Grandpa getting married.
Well, he wanted to get married, and he came home and he only had 3 or 4 days in the service, so he couldn't get married. They had a shower for me and everything, and I got the letter the day of the shower that he couldn't come home. Mm-hmm. So he wanted me to come down to Texas and get married.
He was in Lubbock?
Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock, that's where he was at. And of course, I'd never ridden on a train or even been to a train depot. Mm-hmm. And it was in the wintertime. We got married January 9th, 1943. Oh, wow. And my mother just had a fit because Roland had to walk. Our car was down to my brother's in their yard because we couldn't get up the hill. We had so much snow like this winter. Mm-hmm. And so Roland dragged the suitcase down to the car and got me down to, and then, my dad, when he'd go to town, just before he'd come home, he'd go in a liquor store and have one drink, just one drink. And then we'd go home, or he'd come home. Mm-hmm. And anyway, Clayton Jewell was in there, and his dad, I think his name was Warren Jewell, was the bartender, the head of the liquor store. Mm-hmm. And so Dad saw Clayton in there all dressed up, and he was a captain. And he said, "Where are you stationed?" And he said, "Texas." And he said, "Well, my daughter's going to Texas to get married. My wife is just having a fit because she's never been on a train or anything." Yeah. And Dad says, "When are you going back?" And he told him when he was going back. I think the 5th of January it was. Mm-hmm. And so Dad said, "Well, would you care if she went with you the same day?" And he said, "No." He said, "Where's she going?" And Dad said, Lubbock. And that was about 150 miles from his base where he was, but he had to go through Lubbock to get to his base. Oh, okay. So he said, "No, she can go back the same." And he had a steady girlfriend in Rochester. Mm-hmm. So Roland took me to Rochester, and we met at the depot with Clayton Jewell and his girlfriend. She was a girlfriend then, but they did get married after he got out of the service. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I rode to Texas with him then. He rode on a different car than I did, but we'd have our meals together and stuff like that. And he said, "I'll make sure that she gets on the right train to get to where she has to go." Yeah. So he made sure I had to change trains. I forget the name of the town we changed trains at. It was about 150 miles from where I had to go. And that's where he had to go too. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't at Lubbock. He was at another place.
How long did it take you to get down there?
I think 2 days. Okay. We left on the 5th. I think we got there on the 7th, and we got married on the 9th.
Really quick.
Yeah. And then the night that the hotel I was staying in, was nobody staying in that room, so I stayed in that room till we got married. And the night we got married, about midnight, somebody knocked on the door, and they were going to come into the room, some soldiers. Mm-hmm. And they had rented that same room we had. They rented the same room we had.
On the same night you got married?
Yeah. Oh, no. And so Joe got up and answered the door because they knocked on the door, and it was midnight, woke us up, and he answered the door, and this soldier was surprised to see somebody in there, Mm-hmm. He said, "How long you been here?" Well, he said, "My girlfriend got here on the 7th. We've been here since the 7th. Mm-hmm. And now we got married today." Yeah. So they said they had to go look for another room. And then the next day, we got to get up and walk and look for a room because I couldn't stay at the hotel. Mm-hmm. It was too expensive to stay there. Sure. So we walked and walked and walked because we had no car, didn't have money for bus. Mm-hmm. So we got a paper and looked up addresses, and we walked and walked. And Joe said, "I know we can stay with the guy that I work with. He's a civilian. He works with Joe on the air base." Mm-hmm. But he said, "I don't know where he lives." He said, "The only thing I know, he lives by a water tower." Mm-hmm. And pretty soon we were about a block from the water tower. And here the guy was driving in his yard. Oh. We were going to walk back to the hotel and see if I could stay there another day or two. Yeah. And here here, his name was Pendley,
Mm-hmm.
Pendley, Pendley. And Dad said, well, there Pendley's coming home now. He said, we must be here. We were walking right by his place and didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he jumped out of the car and asked Joe, what are you looking for? And he said, a place to live. He said, where are you at? And he said, well, my wife is at the hotel and we got to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, get in my car. He got his kids and his wife out of the car and took us down to the hotel to get my suitcase and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there.
How long did you stay there for?
I stayed there for about 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And then Joe got moved to San Angelo, and that was up at Lubbock.
Okay.
He got moved to San Angelo. And then that's where I met Sylvia and Roger Corcoran.
Okay.
And Roger was from Medford here.
Okay.
And Sylvia had just got down there. She'd been there a week or two.
So you didn't know them before you moved?
No, I didn't know them at all. Sylvia come to the door and wanted me to go with her on a Saturday. And I said, I just got back from shopping for groceries. She was going to leave the next day for San Angelo, and she wanted me to go with her.
Mm-hmm.
But I had just shopped for groceries. I could eat there at Pendley's house,
Mm-hmm.
fix my own meals. And so I said, I have to wait till I get these meals eaten up now. And so I didn't go down for a couple of weeks until I got down on my food. And then I went down to Texas on the bus by myself.
Mm-hmm.
To San Angelo. I forget how far that was.
Yeah.
And they were there to meet us, Joe and Roger and Sylvia. And then we all stayed together at their place where they were renting. Of course, we knew we couldn't stay there very long with 4 people.
Yeah.
So we had to get out and look for another place. And then we found this place by the name of Davis. It was a great big old house, just a huge old house,
Mm-hmm.
unpainted. It didn't look very nice at all. But it was just an old lady living there.
Yeah.
And we rented from them. And we lived there for 7.5 months.
Oh, wow.
So I was down in Texas 8 months then. And then Joe got sent overseas. And Roger did too.
Okay.
And then he was in the paratroopers then.
Grandpa was?
Yeah, Grandpa was in the paratroopers. And then I came home.
Came back up here?
Yeah, back up here. Back to Pine Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what did you do after you were in Pine Island? That's when he was shipped off. That was like during the war.
Yeah, he went overseas and he never had to jump he jumped overseas, but he never jumped. He jumped the plane the day they was going to go and jump. A whole bunch was going to jump at one time on this base, and they were fighting there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
this
he knew
overseas?
This
was overseas?
Yeah, overseas.
Okay.
And when they got in the air, there was something wrong with their plane. So they had to go back and change planes. Mm-hmm. So Joe was late getting to jump. They had to change planes and get another plane. Mm-hmm. And then he jumped, and they were shooting. He said they jumped about 300 feet, real low, because they were shooting at him.
Yeah.
And he hit the ground, and he felt somebody pulling on him, and he thought that it was the Germans,
Yeah.
pulling on him. And here it was some of his own bunch. They were down in the foxhole, and they were pulling on him to get him out of the fire.
Oh, okay. They were pulling him down.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then he got shot in the leg about 2-3 days after that.
Yeah.
That's when he got shot in the leg.
Yikes.
And then he was alone. Well, he was with 3 or 4 guys when they got shot. And they saw these boys. There was 3 or 4 he said they were just young boys. He didn't think they were more than not even 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And I think there was 3 or 4 of them. And they were shooting at this house. They were in a house that the Germans had lived in, but the Germans were out of there. Mm-hmm. And they had to go through each house to see if there was anybody living there. And they were staying there. Yeah. And they were going down the stairs, open staircase. They were going down the stairs. And one of the boys shot right through the window in the open staircase. Joe was the last one. He got shot right here in the leg. Mm-hmm. And then when he got shot, those other young boys that was with him, they were so scared. They had all the guns. They just took the guns and they run. Mm-hmm. And left him there alone. He didn't have a gun or nothing. Yeah. But when the boys came in the house, the Germans, he could say halt. And I don't know how he got the guns away from him, but he got the guns. And he held the guns on them, and they carried him on their backs to the nearest first aid station so he could get sewed up and then send him out to the hospital.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he was in the hospital a whole month.
Yeah. So how did you hear? Did you hear about it? Like
no, I didn't hear about. When I heard about it, my mother. It was on a Saturday, I think, and we saw 2 soldiers walking up to the house. And Mom said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "I wonder what happened to Joe." There's 2 soldiers walking up to our house, and they walked on that place in Pine Island, that big old porch. Did you know where we lived?
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Well, I'll have to show you sometime. It's right on Main Street. There's a great big old open porch.
Okay.
And they came up on the porch and rapped on the door. And they said, "Did you get a telegram?" And I said, "No." And they handed me a telegram that Joe got shot in the leg.
Oh, I bet that was scary watching those guys
Yeah,
come up to the house.
but when they were walking up the house, I thought they were coming to tell me he got killed, you know.
Yeah.
But I never saw the soldiers again.
Yeah.
Never saw it. It was 2 of them, and I never saw them again.
Huh.
And they said, "Your husband got shot in the leg." And then I had to go up to the telegraph office and get a copy of it. And it said, I got it somewhere. I don't know where it's at now, but probably in my bank.
Yeah. But so you got the telegram, and did you get to correspond with Grandpa then?
No, just by mail.
Yeah.
But he couldn't write. And Joe was a good writer, very good writer. But he was in bed. He was in the hospital a whole month.
Yeah.
And then some of his guys, when he was going to get out, they came to pick him up with a Jeep. And then they had to go back across some bridges, and they had the bridges blocked off. The Germans did.
Sure.
They jumped out, moved their cars, and went through. Got back to their base.
Oh, you guys are brave souls.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
He was lucky he didn't get, and he could walk on his leg and everything.
Yeah.
It just missed the bone.
Yeah, so it just went through his muscle?
Yeah, it just went through the fat part of his leg.
Oh, okay.
Your dad's got the bullet.
Yeah, it's in that. It's in
yeah,
that case
that thing. Yeah.
With all of his.
Yeah.
So it's got the case that
Yeah.
has the Purple Heart in there.
Yeah.
What else does it have?
Downstairs.
Yeah, it's got a couple other medals in there too.
Yeah, there's a medal I got too. I had it wore on my wrist, and I put that in there.
What was that?
I forget what it was.
Oh, okay.
It's in there though.
Yeah. Well, didn't he get another medal for doing something overseas too, didn't he?
Oh, he's got 2 or 3 medals.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're all in the case.
Didn't he detonate a bridge?
What?
Didn't he detonate?
Oh yeah, he did.
What was
yeah.
that?
I don't know. Somewhere in Germany, he jumped off. They were on a what's that thing you ride? The thing everybody rides.
Like a Jeep?
Yeah. No. It had big log chains on.
Oh, the tanks.
Tank, yeah. They were on a tank, and they were going to this place to detonate that bridge. And Joe was the only one that knew how to really detonate it. And so he jumped off the bridge, or off this tank, and run ahead because they weren't going fast enough, he didn't think. Yeah. And he ran ahead, and he detonated, because they wanted to cross that bridge.
Yeah.
And he plugged, or took the things off, whatever that detonation was. He took them off so they could cross the bridge.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And I don't know, I was somewhere in Germany, but I don't know where.
Yeah, he got a medal for that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Man, that's crazy. So, how long was he in the war? How long was he?
4 years.
From what year did he leave?
What year did he go in?
What year did he leave overseas again?
I think it was 44 or 45.
Okay.
We got married in 43. Yeah. Probably 44. I don't know. I forgot, Kelly.
So he was gone. Did he get to come home during those 4 years at all?
No.
So he was gone for 4 years, just.
No, he was there. No, 4 years he was overseas.
So you didn't see him for 4 years?
No.
Oh my gosh. That's got to be pretty scary then, huh?
Yeah.
Without.
No, he had to go overseas, and I didn't see him till he came home. And then when he came home, he was home. It was on a Saturday, I think. And my mother saw this soldier walking on the other side of the street. She said, look out the window, Virginia. There's a soldier walking the other side of the street. It looks like Joe. Mm-hmm. And I looked out, and sure enough, it was him. I was on the opposite side of the street.
Yeah.
And here he was going to cross and come over. And he didn't even tell me he was home.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, that's
and
a
then
big surprise.
He was home for, I don't know, I think a month. Mm-hmm. And then he had to go back in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Fort, what's the name of that fort where they get, I forget.
I'm not sure.
I know what it is, but I can't think right now. But anyway, that's where he was. And the day or so, he went back there, and he just got back there, and they said, didn't you get the message? You were supposed to wait for another couple of weeks because we had too many men to take care of, mm-hmm. discharge. So they sent him home again. So he was home for a couple more weeks.
Well, there you go.
Then he had to go back again and get discharged.
Okay, and that was it.
Yeah.
So he just did his time in the war, and then he got out. I thought he was in for longer than that.
You know, he was in for 4 years.
Oh, wow. Quick one.
That's pretty much it, I guess. And we lived in that place for 8 months together, the four of us. One bedroom. We had one bedroom. Mm-hmm. We went and looked, and this lady said, well, it was only one bedroom, but it was a big bedroom. And we said, can we put a sheet or something up in the middle so we could, draw? And so sure, she said. So she gave us some wire, and we hung a big, heavy metal sheet across. Mm-hmm. I mean, a heavy metal iron across, and then we put the sheet on. Yep. So at first we could pull the sheets across when we went to bed at night.
How old were you guys when you got married?
How old?
Yeah.
Well, I was past 21 when I got married.
Okay.
So Joe would have been 25. He was 4 years older than I was.
Okay.
So he was 25 and I was past 21.
Okay, so you guys were in your 20s when all this was going
on.
Huh? You guys were in your 20s when this was all going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how long were you in Pine Island for then?
Oh, gosh.
After Grandpa got home?
We were in Pine Island a long time. He got out of the service, and then we lived with my folks till we bought our farm out there, the farm that we bought, and we built a new house on it.
Did you guys actually do any farming on the farm?
Or we farmed it first.
Yeah.
And then we had 120 acres. Okay. And then we sold the 20 acres back to the guy we bought it from. He wanted to keep, because he had built a house on 20 acres. Mm-hmm. So he wanted, an older man, he wanted to keep that 20 acres. So, well, Joe supposedly sold it to him, but instead he just gave it to him. Because when I asked him where the money was, he said, I just gave him the 20 acres.
Oh, no.
You know him.
Yeah. How long were you in Pine Island before you started having all your kids?
Well, we were in Rochester first. I forgot to tell you that. We were in Pine Island, and then Joe was looking for a job, and he got a job in a garage in Rochester.
Okay. And
so we moved down, and his aunt, Libby, had a room that she rented out to people, and the people that she rented the room out to, a bedroom upstairs, had just left. They had left, and so she was trying to rent it again. And she found out Joe was home. Joe was kind of her favorite, and also Joe's favorite aunt, too. Mm-hmm. So she just left us live there for nothing. She left us stay there. We ate meals together, and we just bought groceries and ate together, just like part of the family.
Sure.
And we lived upstairs and had that room by ourselves to go to bed at night. Mm-hmm. And then we stayed there till we lived there for about a year and a half. And then my mother died, and then my dad, I knew he was already having Joey. My folks had Joey then, because I couldn't have him. I knew my dad would not take care of Joey. He was just a little boy, about like a year old.
Sure.
So I said, I told Joe we'll have to move home and stay with my dad.
Yeah.
So we moved home and stayed with him. We stayed there till we bought our land and built a house on it. And we lived in our new house 13 years before we moved here.
So how did you guys wind up?
How do you wind up?
Yeah.
Well, we're neighbors.
Okay.
They lived at the foot of the hill where my brother lived at that place 17 years. Mm-hmm. And then the guy that he rented from had a place over by Castle Manorville, a farm. and he wanted Joe to go, or he wanted Harold, my brother Harold, to move over there and farm. So my brother left this place. He'd been on it for 17 years. Mm-hmm. And then Joe's folks moved down from Goodhue on it. I never knew who they were at all till they moved down. And they had 8 kids, 4 boys and 4 girls. Mm-hmm. And they had Joe's the oldest, 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 boys, 2 girls. Okay. And then Rowland married Lucille, and I married Joe.
Okay.
They're both in the same family. We got to go in together, and we just got married.
How did you wind up with Joey Andrus?
Well, his mother died when he was born.
Okay.
Right after he was born.
Who was his mother?
Her name was Murdy Roderick.
Okay.
And she got pneumonia. My mother and I stayed there when Joey was born, and then we had just went home. And Otto, my brother, didn't have any. He had to carry in the wood, carry out the ashes, carry in the groceries, everything. I mean, they didn't have no refrigerator, no nothing. Everything had to be like carried to the spring and put down cold water.
Yeah.
Keep it. And then we stayed there for, I think, then we were there 10 days or 2 weeks and went home. And we were only home about 3-4 days, and Otto called up and asked my mother if she could come back, that Murdy was sick. Mm-hmm. And he had to take her to the doctor. And the doctor put her right in the hospital. She had a blood clot in her leg. Mm-hmm. And that's what she died from. She died when Joey was only not even about 3 weeks old.
Yeah.
And of course, we stayed there then. My mother and I stayed there for 3 months. Mm-hmm. And my mother couldn't take care. Otto had 5 kids. And the youngest one to Joey was Arlie, and he was 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And she couldn't run after him.
Sure.
So I had to stay there with her.
Yeah.
And then when we went home, we took Joey home with us because Otto couldn't take care of the baby. Mm-hmm. He could take care of the rest of them, but he couldn't take care of the baby.
Sure.
And then, of course, he got a hired girl right away, and then he ended up marrying her, and that didn't work out. He had 2 more kids, 2 more girls. Mm-hmm. He married another lady, then they got divorced, and he married another lady, and he had 2 girls. So he ended up with 8 boys and 2 girls, just like my dad had.
Yeah. So then you guys just wound up keeping...
Yeah, we just... And when Otto got married, he already had 2 babies from this other woman.
Yeah.
So he really couldn't afford to take Joey back.
Sure.
So Joey knew Otto was his dad, but I just raised him from like he was mine.
Yeah.
And I raised him practically because my mother was in her late 60s. She was getting too old to take care of him. Mm-hmm. So I just took care of him like he was mine.
Yep. Well, he was.
Yeah.
So how long before you started having kids then with Grandpa? How old was Joey at that point?
Joey was, I was trying to think, about 1.5 years, 2 years old when I had Sandy.
Yeah.
Joey just turned 7. No, he's older than that. Joey just turned 72 on 2nd March. Mm-hmm. He just turned 70. And Sandy will be 66 in January.
Okay.
About 6 years, he must have been about 6 years old when I had Sandy, probably 1st grade.
Yeah. How long between the kids did you have? It was Sandy and then...
Susan.
Susan.
Susan will be, there's about 3 years different, almost 3 years difference.
So you had your 2 girls and then you had your 3 boys.
Danny, David, and Kim.
So you got Sandy, Susan, Danny, David. How did you get the name Kim?
Joe's mother took care of a little boy when she lived in town. She took care of a neighbor's boy out in the country.
Yeah.
And it was just a little baby. And his name was Kim.
Yeah.
And I just loved that baby. When I'd go down there, I'd hold that baby. Mm-hmm. And I love the name Kim. Mm-hmm. So I said, if we ever have another kid, it's going to be called Kim.
I always thought that was funny that you had 2 S's and 2...
Yeah, I had 2 S's and then 2 D's.
And then a K.
Crazy.
So I know my dad, he was still a kid when you guys moved to Waseca.
Huh?
My dad was still a kid.
Yeah, he was 10 years old.
Why did you guys move from Pine Island to Waseca?
Because Roger Corcoran was from Waseca, and we lived with him 8 months in Texas.
Yeah, so you guys stayed connected through all those years.
Yeah, and his folks lived in Medford. Mm-hmm. And then Jim, I think Jim was Roger's brother, and he was a couple of years older, and he bought this Corcoran place out here. He was already in town.
Yeah.
And but he needed help, so he asked Roger if he'd come and work with him.
Sure.
So Roger went to work with him, and he went from Medford. Then he had to move from Medford over here because it was driving every day.
Yeah.
So he moved over here, and then by that time their place got so big that Roger just went, and they went in partnership then. And then they had the two brothers own this Corcoran manufacturing place.
Well, what did they do out there at Corcoran?
Oh, everything. They still do.
Yeah. Stainless
steel and everything.
It's like a metal manufacturer.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And then Roger used to come to Pine Island and see us all the time. And every time he'd come, he'd beg Joe to go back and move to Waseca and go to work for him. Because he said he knew Joe could do anything. Joe was one of these guys that could do anything in the service. He never had no papers or nothing. He could do anything. It didn't matter if it was metal or wood or what it was. Yeah. He could do it. And so Roger kept coming to Pine Island every 3-4 months. He'd come to Pine Island and try to get Joe to come over to go to work for him. Yeah. And finally, he said, "This is the last time I'm coming over here." And he came over and he spent the whole day at Pine Island. Yeah. And he said, we're going to start profit sharing, and we're going to start it in about a week or two. Yeah. And he said he told Joe how much money he'd pay him a month plus the profit sharing, which was a lot more money than he was making in Pine Island. Yeah. He was working for a hardware guy in Pine Island. Okay. And it was a lot more money. And we had building our house out there, and we was there 13 years. And we didn't really want to leave our house either. Yeah. But we put it up for sale, and we had somebody come and look at it, and they said we had somebody run it for a year, and they didn't buy it. Sure. And then they moved away, and then this other guy took over, and they were from Byron. Okay. And they said they'd live there and see how they liked it. They'd rent for a year and see how they loved it, so they bought the house. Okay. Well, we sold the place to them. Yeah.
What were you doing at that time? Were you working, or were you?
I was working in Pine Island too. I was working at the grocery store. Okay. I didn't do anything when I first got here because I had all these kids to take care of.
Yeah, when you moved to Waseca.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no jobs when you were in Waseca either?
Yeah, I worked at the grocery store then after I was here a while. Oh, okay. I got a job at the grocery store, and then I worked there I think about 4 years. And then I got a job at it's the one that's on the corner up here, where the seniors are, right next to
there used to be a Ben Franklin up there.
Yeah, Ben Franklin. Yep. I got a chance to go work there, and I worked there until we moved, I guess. Yeah. Long time.
How long did Grandpa work at Corcoran's?
Well, he worked there till he retired, till we moved to. We bought that place out in the country, Then we lived in that. After Susan got married and Kim got married, we didn't have anybody living with us in that big house that we bought right next to Gabio's. So
is that the one up
downtown? Yeah. Okay. Down here, gotcha. On 5th Street. Yep. Yeah, it's a big house. Big downstairs, all finished off and everything.
So when you guys moved to Waseca, you moved into that house?
No. When we moved to Waseca, yeah, we moved into that house. I was thinking we stayed with Corcoran's. No, we didn't. We waited. I stayed in Pine Island till he got it. The basement wasn't finished yet, but I could put beds down there and the kids could sleep down there. Okay. But it wasn't finished off. Yeah. But we moved anyhow, and then he finished it. After we moved.
So you stayed in that house until Grandpa retired?
Yeah, 13 years. Oh, wow. And then we moved out on where the trailer houses are. We bought that right by the office. It's a double wide trailer. We moved out there, and we were there 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Then we sold that, moved here. And we moved to Danny's place.
Okay.
Where you come up.
The duplex.
Yeah, that yellow house.
Yep. But you guys were down in Arizona too, weren't you?
Every winter.
Oh, you were only down there in the winter?
Yeah, we just go down in the winter.
Okay. So I remember going to that place.
And we were living in our double wide, or our new house on 5th Street when we did that.
Yeah.
And then we also at the trailer house. Yeah. When we lived at the trailer house, David stayed there when we were gone. He lived there with us.
Sure.
And then he just stayed there and took care of the house when we were gone. We'd be gone 8 months down Arizona every winter.
So would you tell people you're from Waseca then? Is that where you claim Waseca as home, or do you think of Pine Island as home?
Well, I think Waseca is my home now.
Yeah. Because
we've been here so long.
Yeah, you kind of established yourself here for a long time.
But we like Pine Island too.
Yeah.